Good morning, writers. So, when you're writing your personal narrative, I want you to make sure that you have a beginning, a middle, and an end. Now, in the beginning of your personal narrative, you need to make sure to introduce the characters, and especially the main character. So, this should probably happen in your first paragraph. You don't want to get until the very end of your narrative and then finally realize that you haven't introduced one of your main characters. So, introduce your main characters. Introduce the setting, which is where your story takes place, and then introduce the actions. What are your main characters doing? Now, in the middle of your story, you need to tell the reader what the problem is. So you introduce the problem, and then remember, the problem gets worse. So you introduce the problem gets worse, and then the main character usually tries to solve the problem. And sometimes that makes it even worse, okay? So in a story plot, we have the rising conflict, the problem at its worst, and then finally the problem gets better, usually as a result of something that the main characters do. Make sure and use details so that your reader is able to make a picture in their mind. They're able to imagine what's happening in the story. And then finally, in the end of the story, the problem gets better, and usually there's some sort of lesson or some sort of moral at the end of the story. So, when you're writing your rough draft of your personal narrative, make sure you have a beginning, a middle, and an end. Don't forget to introduce the characters right away at the beginning, and don't forget that every good story has to have a problem, okay? And that the main character solves the problem, and that's how the story eventually ends. All right, have a good week, guys.